can also think of us as sort of like an AWS for crypto or an AWS for Solana. And I think that's actually like somewhat missing the point, because it's not necessarily that Firedancer itself makes things fast, but it produces competition, which then will make Agave faster, because now that if they want to make their client fast too. So it's kind of like a race in some sense to make a really fast client, which makes everything kind of better. And you can create a lot of value, I guess, by doing what other people don't want to do. Honestly, just like use Orb, play around with it, and then yell at us for things that you don't like or things that you want so we can keep iterating. Really, we just need feedback.
Hi everyone, here we are again at day 3 at Solana Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi, and I'm joined by Nicolas Pennie, co-founder and COO of Helius. Nicolas, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. It's day 3 at the Breakpoint conference, right? Day 1, day 2, filled with energy. See a lot of builders, a lot of developers, innovators, just all around, with all the booths set up. Just a lot of activity going on. Makes you very bullish on what's going on and being built on the Solana ecosystem. How are you feeling about Breakpoint so far?
Good. I mean, it's my 3rd Breakpoint. I think every time I go every year, it's interesting because you could see the subtle shifts and what's changed in the ecosystem. I think in this one, what's interesting right now is that it's just getting like a little more like serious. There's more serious people, more serious businesses. Stuff is like really kind of moving in more of a serious direction. I think it's really great to see for crypto, actually. It's what we need.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we need. We've kind of seen in the TradFi world is like kind of jokes, right? So it's good to see that, things are getting serious. Like JPMorgan is here, right?
Yeah.
Just a lot of things going on. So kind of high level, I want to ask you just for, what are your expectations for crypto in 2026 and beyond? Like, where do you see this industry kind of moving?
Let's get some facts. 37% of you aren't subscribed to this channel. That's almost 4 out of 10 just freeloading the alpha. So come on, hit subscribe, and I promise to keep leveling up the show with the best guests and the juiciest insight. Go on, do it now.
Yeah, I tell people sometimes it's kind of like crypto's almost entering into its like boring phase, but that's actually like really good for it actually becoming useful for people. So it means like you mentioned JPMorgan, like those type of institutions are kind of coming and focusing more on the on-chain world in crypto. And there's the SEC's changed its sort of perspective on crypto. So it means there's a lot more we can do and actually bring sort of like things like tokenized stocks and assets on chain. We can do a whole lot more in crypto now. With that sort of, it's like a little bit more, it's more serious, right? So it means like we might have less, like there's the NFT craze before, but now we're seeing is more of a shift towards like financial rails, like payments, cross-border payments, high frequency trading is kind of ramping up. Like it's just a very different ecosystem that resembles more of a, I guess like a crypto equivalent of TradFi, but also a little bit different. And it's cool to see it evolve. And I think 2026 is going to be all about that.
Yeah, no, we really are I love the way you kind of put that. And we are starting to see real world use cases being talked about more, being developed more, and have more of a front and center picture, which is great. So can you tell us, kind of 2 questions for you here. Can you tell us a little bit about Helius, right? What you guys do? And then why did you decide, to focus on Solana as opposed to maybe another ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah. There's different ways you can kind of talk about Helius. I think a quick way to explain is we're almost like an internet provider. If people want to like write or like submit orders on Solana, or say they want to read data, understand like what's the current state of the ledger, what does the history look like, what's someone doing, like we serve that sort of purpose. We make it easier for people to do that. You can also think of us as, say the API for internet capital markets. It's another great term I like to use. Or like our CEO likes to often say, we're like a Home Depot for internet apps, because we basically have all these tools and these things to help people build their businesses on top of crypto.
That's so like, what are you seeing when people come to you to like build businesses on top of crypto, or they're using the Helius ecosystem? What are you kind of seeing as like, what are kind of some businesses that people are building or using, Helius for?
Yeah, there's like a range of things. I'd say that you have all the sort of classic financial stuff like lending platforms like Camino, or you have like things like cross-border payments or payment systems as well. They would integrate Helius as well because they need to understand, say you want to do something like compliance and you want to check the history of where this money came from. You use us to kind of figure out, to look at that data and get the data and actually do that analysis. So that's the kind of one use case. You also have stuff like DePIN that's interesting, like Helium, which often gets confused with Helius. Yeah. Very different if you're sure. But Helium is what they do is they are a decentralized mobile network, right? And then we help power them because whenever they need to issue out things like rewards for people who are running their hotspots, they need to figure out kind of like that data, and we help provide them with that data.
And then from Helius's perspective and yours as well, why is Solana so special? Like, what's so special about Solana compared to, someone else?
Yeah, the quick answer is that Solana is fast and cheap. That's really the main thing, is that if you want to do anything at scale, it needs to not cost too much to write those transactions to submit orders or change the state of things. And it also needs to be able to handle a lot of throughput. If you can only do, say, like 10, 20 transactions per second, that gets bottlenecked really quickly. Yeah. And Solana kind of fixes that. Going a bit further, I think part of the reason Helius focused on Solana and why we decided to build on Solana is that Solana has a very engineering and product driven culture. It's pragmatic. Its goal is to make something that'll actually work in the real world, that will support real applications and real scale. Right. And the mindset is very much focused on that. That's a bit hard to describe, but I guess it has just this culture and ethos where we're working with teams that are very sort of serious about the engineering. And that makes it great for us to build as sort of an infrastructure provider for engineers, because they can also really understand the benefit of our product and they care about it as well. So it really helps the feedback loop and, they understand the value of what we're providing.
Right. And that's actually, I think, a perfect segue because, you mentioned that's the speed, right, of Solana. They just here, I think yesterday, Firedancer was announced, right? Can you talk to us about Firedancer? I think it's often seen as kind of like a buzzword. I don't know if a lot of people know necessarily what it means for Solana, but can you talk a little bit about what it means for the ecosystem and also how it impacts Helius and what it means for you guys as well?
Yeah. So fundamentally, Solana Network is like a bunch of servers that work together to agree on a state of things and produce transactions and whatnot. There's the network in terms of a protocol, kind of like the internet. Like the internet is really a conglomerate of different companies and people that kind of figure out how to send data around. And blockchains are like that too. So you have the Solana network. You have one client that used to be called Solana. It's now called Agave. And that's like the main one on Solana. Like everyone runs Agave. Firedancer is a new client. So people can now run either Firedancer or Agave. The Firedancer was basically built for pure performance. Its goal was try to hit 1 million TPS. So essentially you could think of it as a heavily engineered. It's built by Jump. So they're an HFT firm, very smart people. It's basically built for performance with the goal of having a client that can handle significantly more demand on Solana. And what's interesting though is that because you now have two clients, everyone always talks about Firedancers can make things so fast. And I think that's actually somewhat missing the point, because it's not necessarily that Firedancer itself makes things fast, but it produces competition, which then will make Agave faster, because now if they want to make their client fast too. So it's kind of like a race in some sense to make a really fast client, which makes everything kind of better, because that's kind of how capitalism works, right? It's you kind of compete on these things. And then also there's a nice side effect of by having two clients, they have to kind of coordinate on things to kind of agree on things that are network changes, changes that aren't related to their client, but just how Solana functions for the greater good. So you also have more smart people actually kind of contributing to the sort of long-term vision of how Solana will function. So that's the longer answer. The short answer is things will get faster and better.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not just about getting fast.
Yeah.
It's about that competition.
Yeah.
Well,
it's sort of how do things get faster? And I think there's a lot of it sort of changes the dynamics a bit. And I think that's really good.
It's very exciting. So I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about Helius, because I think you guys are, kind of gaining a lot of traction in this ecosystem. Why do you think that is? Why is Helium successful in your opinion? And then, or why are you guys having success? And how does that differ from maybe, some other things that kind of maybe stall out and don't have as much success?
First and foremost, Helius being a developer platform, we're almost like a utility company. We're such a core sort of platform layer that everyone's always going to need that. And then part of the reason I think we were really successful is more akin to just traditional sort of what makes a startup successful. And that's really, really relentlessly focusing on your users and customers and figuring out what do people actually need? What are their actual pain points? And we kind of built our business focusing on the things that were missing and things that people didn't want to do. So it means sometimes you're doing the, say, like the unsexy or the hard or frustrating problems. You're finding solutions to those and building that. And you can create a lot of value, I guess, by doing what other people don't want to do. Right. And making their lives better. And that's part of the reason we've gained a lot of traction, is by solving those specific problems.
And like, where do you see, like, so I guess looking, let's look ahead a little bit, like 3-5 years from now, where do you see, like, how do you see Helius being in the Solana ecosystem? Where do you guys see your position, and like, how are you going to get there essentially?
In the ideal state, I'd say like our position would be kind of similar in the sense that you can also think of us as sort of like an AWS for crypto or an AWS for Solana. So it'll be kind of the same thing in a simple terms. But if Solana has doing a lot more throughput, has a lot more business, and the scale is increased, there's a lot of wealth to do to also sort of handle that scale. So in the simplest terms, it's actually like Solana has grown and succeeded and crypto succeeded. And then our scope to kind of support that has increased a ton. And there's a lot we're going to do to kind of help facilitate that. Part of it is, we recently launched a new block explorer called Orb. And the goal of that is to make it easier for people to understand what's happening on chain, so they can look at their transactions. There's like AI explain. It's kind of trying to put it in like a human-readable format instead of just a bunch of like cryptographic hashes. If you're looking at block explorer, you just see all this like confusing jargon.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on.
It's like basically going to help you like read like SoulScan, for example.
Yeah, it's like SoulScan. Yeah, and it's like we're trying to make it even like more user-friendly than SoulScan. So someone like like your parents can go and like do something and then look at it and be like, oh, I understand what's going on. And if you still want, you can drill down into the more like advanced stuff, right? But it kind of has that separation between kind of like less technical and then like technical, and then it's trying to simplify it. We're trying to get closer to sort of that sort of like simple Apple experience, the way they design their products. It's like very easy to use, very consistent. So that's our approach to the block explorer part.
That's really fascinating, honestly, because it took me a while to just understand how to read SoulScan, like all those like numbers and everything just kind of like blows my mind. And I think, like, so I guess can you explain a little bit more how it would work? Like, so how would like my dad, for example, who's like, doesn't know anything about this, but he obviously knows about, how to read his bank statement and things like that. How would that work with him?
Yeah, I think if he knows, like, let's say, for example, he knows his like wallet address, like you can put it in there. It's like almost like a Google search bar, right? You put in your address and then it can show your history and a bunch of stuff. So it'll show like your portfolio balance. It'll show things you hold. It'll show your transaction history. When it shows your transaction history, it'll say something more along the lines of, so-and-so sent you $5. You went and made a trade on like Jupiter. So you traded like this for this, and that's how it worked. And then you kind of drill into things and it explains more. If they click a transaction, they're like, oh, I don't remember what this is. Instead of just showing the mechanics of that trade happened, because under the hood, the way these financial systems works is complicated. And TradFi and crypto, if you're trading between two things, even like say Solana with like USDC, it's taking all these like routes. It sometimes splits it between different like AMMs and stuff, and like he's not going to understand that. But when you click the transaction at the top, it should just say something simple, kind of like, you traded this for that, and this was the result. And that's all they really care about. And then a lot of block explorers, because the way the data is under the hood, is in the complicated form. So another way of saying it, we're transforming sort of like the mechanics of how things, the complexity of how it works, like in reality under the hood. We're sort of like, kind of parsing that out and trying to transform it into something that's like more focused on like the business logic or like the day-to-day sort of use case of the user's perspective. Right. So it's like that translation bit that we're providing.
See, and we often like, we talk about like mass adoption, how you're going to bring the masses on so much. It's like little things like that. I mean, not little, right? But like things like that really kind of is what would bring the masses. Cause just as simple as looking at SoulScan or like the blockchain is very intimidating. Even people, I think the majority of people in crypto don't even know how to read the blockchain or know what they know what they interacted with, but when they look at it, it just absolutely confuses them. So I think something like that is so important to just make people more confident in interacting with this. And just, making new users just like understand this stuff. So I think that's awesome. And any plans on when that would be coming out, or when?
So the Explorer's already out. We released it, I think, last month. So it's out, but we're kind of constantly iterating on it. So if everyone uses it and they want to, like, we have like a Telegram on it too, and people just like, we're at this conference, everyone's coming up to me and saying, oh, I love this, but I'd love if you add that, right? So, we're constantly just iterating on it really quickly to kind of like just converge on what do people really need And what does that look like, right? Because everyone has such a different sort of perspective and technical skills. So, yeah, we're iterating on a lot. And then you mentioned kind of mass adoption and focus on the consumer side. And something I'll add is that like consumer side, is really important. But another thing that's kind of cool is that some of the stuff we're doing kind of behind the scenes to make like data faster to query and more accessible and like the performance better there is something that your regular user won't see. But actually what it does is it's the things that are necessary for, you mentioned like JPMorgan, or the things necessary for say like Western Union or these companies. And then they can start using, that's the stuff they need to start using it. And then maybe your regular user is just using it through them, and they may not even know it's crypto, or maybe they do, but like, right. So there's kind of this, like, I foresee a world where you have sort of like easy to use consumer stuff if you choose, but there's people also going to use crypto that don't really know, or maybe they know, but they don't really actually, they're like more, even more removed from it. Right. Like if you make a credit card payment and it just settles behind the scenes in stablecoins, right? Like you don't even know or to care what's going on the crypto side. You just know that your payment is cheaper because the fees are cheaper. So I think that's kind of the future as well.
Yeah, I think that's how most people feel, right? That's how when they look at their bank, they don't know how any of that's working. They just care that it goes through and that their fees are as low as possible. So I think that's super important. So Nicolas, it's been a very educational conversation. It kind of blew my mind on a few things. But kind of before I let you go here, what's one thing you want people to kind of take away about this conversation, just about Helius in general and what you guys are building?
Honestly, just like use Orb, play around with it, and then yell at us for things that you don't like or things that you want so we can keep iterating. Really, we just need feedback, and we need kind of like every single category of user and person playing with these sort of things to kind of give us the data we need to make it better for everyone.
Fantastic. Yeah. Nicolas, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So you obviously like this video enough that you've got to the end. That's quite a big task. But listen, do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe button, and also check out what video's next, because I think you'll love it. But if you want even more, and when I'm talking more, I'm talking about member-generated ideas, incredible alpha, research, everything there to help you in your journey, just head to realvision.com/join for the best financial intelligence out there and the pure alpha that's within the platform.